This is a special presentation of Milwaukee Public Television, Next Avenue, a community conversation, work and purpose, live from the Milwaukee campus of Waukesha County Technical College. Now here's your host, Mark Segrist.
Well, it's great to be with you. Welcome to our third in a series of community conversations. We're speaking to you from the campus of Waukesha County Technical College in Milwaukee, and the theme of tonight's episode is work and purpose. We're joined by a talented lineup of experts to help us better reinvent ourselves and further educate ourselves for today's very challenging job market. We'll also learn more about potential ways to better serve our communities through volunteerism. Our good friend, MPTV General Manager Ellis Bromberg can't be with us tonight, but let me tell you, Ellis is really behind this creative initiative that we're launching this season. Our series is really an extension of PBS's Next Avenue website project aimed at America's growing 50-plus generation. Helpful features on the website include and range from health to money matters, living and learning. You can easily access the Next Avenue webpage through a special link right at mptv.org, which of course is the site where we're live streaming tonight's presentation. Now, our featured guest this evening is Pamela Mitchell. Pamela is founder of the Reinvention Institute. She is an expert when it comes to helping baby boomers, those of us here on stage and in the audience, better prepare ourselves to survive today's very challenging job market. In addition to heading up her enterprise and consulting business, Ms. Mitchell has extensive experience in leading international business development and relationship management for a number of very high-profile media and entertainment companies across America. So, please help me give a warm welcome to Ms. Pamela Mitchell.
Great
to have you with us, Pam.
Thank you so much. Always Pamela.
This is a treat, and this is a fascinating topic, and I'm so interested in your enterprise that you launched after a very successful corporate career as a corporate executive. Tell us about the Reinvention Institute. How does it work?
Well, the Reinvention Institute, really we are an organization that people can come to learn how to reinvent themselves, because reinvention is a practical life skill that takes us through the different ages and stages of our lives. So what we do at the Reinvention Institute is we teach you basically how to do that. We give you the tools, the knowledge, the community, other people who are interested in reinvention, as well as the inspiration to take what you've learned and go out there and recreate your world as you see fit.
Reinventing ourselves, especially at this time of our lives, 50-plus generation, can be very intimidating, and sometimes we're pretty stubborn doing it.
Yes.
How do we get past that?
Well, you know, the thing is, Mark, is to understand that there are no more safe industries.
Yeah.
And there are no more safe companies. There are no more safe jobs. And even though that might seem like a very scary proposition, the truth of the matter is that where that sense of safety and power has shifted. So it's no longer resident outside ourselves. Now the true form of job security is that ability to reinvent yourself. It's that ability to take your skills and talents and reapply them in new ways. So I think really understanding that it's just about taking what you've done over the past 20, 25 years in your career and thinking about how do I open up a new area for myself, apply them in a new way.
Now, how do we come to terms with what we actually have to reinvent?
Well, you know, the thing is that when in looking at this, you know, and saying, well, I've really got to do this, I mean, there are two real kinds of reinvention in this. Sometimes it's what we want to do. Sometimes we wake up one morning and we're like, you know, I've been doing this, it's great, and but I'm ready for something different. And then there are what I call forced reinventions, where, you know, we've been going through a pretty huge forced reinvention since 2008, where, you know, our companies are laying us off, or the financial markets and our savings have been decimated, and we're continuing to work, but the opportunities have shifted. They're no longer in what we've been doing. So that's where we have to take a step back, take a look at the changing landscape and say, all right, I want to continue to be productive. How do I continue to move forward?
What are some of the most obvious areas where at 50-plus, age group of 50-plus, we really do have to reinvent ourselves? Is it necessarily technology, knowledge of social media, interacting with the greater world that way? Is it the team concept? What are some of the obvious things we have to get past and learn?
Well, you know, I think that there's a real interesting way to look at it. As I was flying here, I was sitting next to an entrepreneur on a plane, and he told me that most of his workforce was 50 plus and that he preferred to hire people 50 plus. But what he said to me was this. He said, you know, when you come to me, I want your glass half full. And what he meant by that is, I want you to come with some experience, but I want there to be space for you to learn and to grow. And I thought that that was a really powerful, powerful statement. So there has to be room in you, even though you've had 25, 30 years, to continue to learn and grow. There's always more room. So to say, all right, maybe I do need to polish my technology skills. Maybe I do need to look at my industry and say, are there new areas that my industry is moving into that I can become more proficient in? So not to really just look at the 30 years that you've had, but where is the world heading and how can you add to that to continue to be relevant, I think is what 50 plus people need to take a look at.
There are two things that you just said that I think are very powerful. One, the employer that you met on the plane wants to purposely hire people 50 plus, and the half full concept. As it pertains to 50 plus, why is he going after that age group? I mean, what do we have to offer instinctively?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, people talk about ageism, and ageism, Mark, absolutely exists. But what the flip side of that is that people 50 plus are perceived as being much more stable in terms of the workforce and much more loyal, and to really be reliable, and that experience is valued because it does take time for people who don't have experience to ramp up. So these are all benefits. And when you add those benefits with the space to continue to learn and grow, then it becomes a very powerful and compelling offering for an employer.
Okay, now we're talking about experiences on the jobs over the years. Are we talking about soft skills primarily, or are we talking about, I mean, hard experiences?
Well, you know, that's an interesting point, because when we look at both soft and hard skills, and you know, soft skills being like being a good communicator, on time, getting along, those types of things, and then hard skills, those are the skills that we actually use to perform the functions of our jobs, whether we're salespeople, so we know how to negotiate a contract, we know how to write up an agreement, those kinds of things. Looking at both soft and hard skills, both of those are useful when we look at them from a skill perspective, as opposed to a job function perspective, which is how we tend to think of ourselves. We think of ourselves as that real estate salesperson, or that lawyer, or that operations manager. And we don't think about what are the soft and hard skills that I bring to this particular job. When we think about those soft and hard skills, then we can think, where else can those skills be used? And that opens up new areas for us to pursue. Exciting
areas. Okay, now as it pertains to your statement about this employer wants 50 plus employees whose glasses are half full. How typically today, how are employers filling us to the top?
Well, that's the thing. I think really it's not so much necessarily for the employers to fill us to the top, right? He wants room for you to come in and say, hey, you know, there's room for me to learn, but I also think that we need to take responsibility for keeping that space and filling ourselves to the top. So coming in and talking about the ways in which we're continuing to learn and continuing to grow. So those are really critical things as well. But when we go into an employer, having space for them to be the expert, to learn. Because sometimes people come in and they're like, you need to reward me for these 30 years that I've got.
Now, are we expecting, when you're talking along these lines, when we hit the ground running in a new job, especially in a new branch of the workforce we have not been involved in before, are we expected to embrace potential mentors on the job, to learn from our peers, to learn even from younger people?
Yes, yes. And that, Mark, speaks to another one of the underlying, I guess, belief systems about older people, 50 plus in the workforce, is that they can't take direction, and they can't take direction or learning from younger people.
Is that true or only partially true?
Well, what I will say to that is that whenever there's a belief system, there's usually some truth behind it. Whether it's 100% true, generally not. But it really invites us to look at ourselves and say, are there ways when somebody who is 30 says something to us about the way it should work that we're not listening? You know, do we figure we've been at it more years, so therefore we know, and therefore we're missing the things that that person is telling us that could really enhance what we know, and then conversely bringing our experience and wisdom to them so that together it's a much more powerful package. I think the point is to understand that we have something to learn, 50 plus have something to learn from the millennial group, the 20-somethings, the 30-somethings, and conversely, that they have something to learn from us. So it becomes a partnership.
Now, you have written about this, and I find this fascinating. The exchange of ideas on the job today, the learning experience, what can be learned from both generations, the 20 plus teaching the 50 plus and vice versa.
Right.
In reality, how does that work? How do we both let our guards down, take a deep breath, and admit to ourselves and to one another, yeah, I could learn more about the social media from you, and perhaps from a 20 plus person, yeah, I can learn probably more for you about how to be better poised during a meeting, or how to be better poised in trying to close that sale.
That's right.
How in reality does that happen?
Well, I think really it starts with the acknowledgement, the willingness to acknowledge what the other person brings to the table.
Yeah.
And that is truly, that's just in general between humans, but it's even more powerful between generations. And to say to someone who's 20-something, you know what, you've got a lot of knowledge and skill, and that knowledge and skill has value, to really acknowledge the value behind it. Not just, oh, it's social media, not important, or what is this Twitter thing, or, you know, to understand the power behind what that skill set is and how it's transforming the world, and to place value on that. Because one of the things you talked about, how I recently wrote this opinion piece for the New York Times on this sharing, and one of the takeaways from the comments that I got from that was that 50 plus people really want to be valued. That's the thing. That's what they're feeling is not happening right now. Our experience, what we bring to the table is not being valued. But the question to ask is, are you valuing what the millennials are bringing to the table? Or are you blowing that off as well? So both sides learning to really value what the other brings to the table, to acknowledge it, to listen to it, and then put it together is where I think the meeting of the minds can happen.
In your opinion, which generation has a harder time to move forward with this concept? Is it the younger one or the older one?
Oh, that's a great question.
Or is it a little of both? I mean, what are you seeing in the workplace when you're consulting?
I think it's a little of both.
Really?
Really, I do. But I have to say, I think that the older generation has more trouble because, of course, the dynamic from, you know, a parent-child dynamic, it's hard to step out of that. You know, usually it's like, okay, well, these, you know, my kids are your age or my kids are older than you. So that's a tough dynamic to step out of.
But ideally, when you see a work team, a project team put together
Right.
in the business place, and you see the talents from both of those generations really interacting,
It's so powerful.
and making something better,
It is
it's
so
powerful.
It's incredibly powerful. It's really incredibly powerful. And everybody learns. Because what happens is that people who are 50 plus start to bring in things that maybe the 20-somethings hadn't considered about the underlying dynamics of power and of how people interact, that they just haven't been in the workforce long enough or worked with enough people to understand, well, if you want to get something accomplished, here's the best way. These people have these concerns, here's how you bring it together. That's the real power.
You know, I know you're spending a lot of time visiting different workplaces across America. What sector of the job market right now is doing the best job? I mean, whether it's advertising or PR or making widgets, what sector of society right now is really doing the best job of merging the talents of both generations, in your opinion?
You know, that's a really great question because I don't know that I think it's industry specific as much as it is certain companies are more committed to it.
And actually promoting it?
In promoting it,
Yeah.
yeah. I really believe that it's a philosophy, and what I have found is that it's really a philosophy that starts with top management on down. And whether or not they believe in fostering that, or if they more or less just kind of allow things to happen, or if it's a particular company that really believes in we need to chase a particular youth market or whatever. But it's really company specific, and it really starts from the top down.
You know, I've always thought the mentor concept with senior mentors embracing younger people coming into corporation or whatever was a very successful thing, a very meaningful thing. But now we're kind of shaking it up.
Right.
It's probably not unusual to be assigned to a mentor who's half your age.
Right, that's right. And I think people need to understand that you can be mentored by people who are half your age, because it's not about years. It's about knowledge, valuable knowledge that's going to help you move forward in your career. And if that happens to be sitting in a 30-year-old, well, then that's where you go get it.
How tough is the job market these days, especially for baby boomers? I mean, what's the reality of it?
It's extremely tough, okay? The studies have shown that, actually it's really interesting. It's actually more difficult for millennials to get a job, okay? Less boomers are out of work than millennials. But once a boomer is out of work, it takes them 3 times as long to get a job.
Why is that, Pamela?
I think it's just a convergence of things, with the ageism, with the experience. By that point, usually there are salary requirements that are, necessary. Again, the flexibility around what people are able to do at that point. And it just takes longer because the pool narrows. The older you get and the higher you get in an organization, the smaller the pool is. There aren't as many vice presidents in companies as there are, retail sales clerks. And that's just a numbers factor. So one of the reasons that I started the Reinvention Institute was to help people fish in different ponds. Because if you've only got this one pool to fish in and only just, a certain number of things, once you fish that out, where do you go? So once you start to look at yourself as skills and talents, you think, well, I have this pond here, but maybe there are a couple other ponds I can fish in as well. Literally
Applying in a sector of the business world that you have not had really any experience in, but you may have the talents and potential to serve that role.
Yeah, and it really requires thinking outside the lines about it and saying, is it a complementary industry? Is this industry going through something that my industry has already gone through, and therefore I can bring some unique perspective to this new field? There are lots of ways of looking at it.
Okay, so how do we sell ourselves, especially when we're 50 plus, venturing into something new territory that we don't necessarily have experience in, but we really have a curiosity about pursuing?
Well, a couple of things. First piece is to understand that every industry has its own language. Okay, so when you're going into a new industry, you need to learn the language of that field. You've got to speak a different language. You've got to understand the culture of that field, how they do things. It's like moving to a foreign country.
Certainly.
So you've got to go through a translation process. You also need to speak to people who are native to that industry, who've been there for a while, to understand what's valued in that industry and to see whether or not you have any gaps that need to be filled.
Okay, so personal contact, learning from one-on-one relationships.
Exactly.
What, just surf the web? Where else do we grasp that knowledge, that lingo, that appreciation for what the culture is all about?
Well, yeah, so surfing the web, reading industry blogs is a really powerful way. I used to say industry trades. They still exist in paper, but they're online much more now.
We're dating ourselves.
I know, we are dating ourselves, right? There's just a few
we
paper
still look
things.
at them.
Exactly.
We still call them that name. So.
Exactly. So,
but really,
the trades.
That's what you do.
Yeah, you look at the trades. Trades are incredibly powerful for 2 reasons. One, they are not translated for the mass market. So don't think that just because you read something in a newspaper, that's for the general market. So they're not using all the industry jargon. When you pick up a trade, it's in all industry jargon. So that's going to tell you, oh, I don't know what this means, this means, this means. So you're going to get the language there. The other thing that you get from the trades is you understand who the key players are, what the trends are, and where they see the future headed. So that's all incredibly valuable information. So when you're targeting an industry, you should be following its trades.
How do we knock on the door, and how do we design that resume to look like we are a good potential hire, even though we might not have the experience to back it up?
Well, when you've done all of this homework, so to speak,
Yeah.
then the key is to begin making connections with natives within the industry, to talk to them about your experience and that industry and its needs, to figure out how you can put together what I call the most legitimate package, because that employer is going to want to know, is this person going to be able to come in and deliver the goals of this particular position?
And to do that, do we network among our existing friends, if we're in a congregation or if we're in a professional group? How
You
just
do.
network?
You start asking around. Now, here's another thing.
Okay.
Another thing that maybe our 30-something and our 20-somethings can really help us with, and that's using LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, very, very powerful tool.
Here I am.
Right. Here I am. Here are people that I know. Here now we have access to friends of friends. Before we never knew, right? You don't know who other people know. LinkedIn has allowed us to see who our friends know.
Okay.
So we can actually go there, do a search, and say, oh, you know what? My next door neighbor happens to know somebody in this industry. Let me ask for an introduction.
Could be lunch, could be something very informal,
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. And I think the real power to understand for 50 plus as well is that we have the ability to move online and offline. Now that's something that the younger generation has to learn from us. When to use online as a tool and when to take it offline.
When you need that personal contact.
touch.
Well,
Right.
when do you? At
Right.
what point do you have to break off the technical connection and make it very human?
When people need to know who you are.
Okay.
So I'm a big proponent of using the technology to reach out and make a connection, but then very quickly to take it offline. Because the important thing to understand is when you're moving into a new industry, it's not just about finding a job. That's the first piece. But when you're in that industry, those are going to be your colleagues and your peers. So you're really looking to build long-term relationships. And ideally, you're starting this before you've even needed to make that transition. When you're in your current industry, start making alliances in different fields now. Why? Because when people know you, you have a higher sense of legitimacy. Those barriers are lower because now you're familiar to them, and then they see what you can do over time.
That extends to professional organizations, to volunteerism, to whatever. Volunteerism, being involved in your children's education.
That's right.
Or whatever.
Those are all wonderful pools.
Once we get our foot in the door, then how do we sell ourselves?
Well,
Especially when we're 50 plus.
yeah, here's the thing. Most people go into these opportunities thinking about what they need. They are not thinking about what the employer needs. They're thinking, I want this job because I like this industry and I blah, 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 I.
More lines of this is what I can do for you?
Right. Well, looking to see what does this hiring manager, what does this employer need in order to be successful in this role? What are the markers? What are the goals that they need to hit? What's the bottom line for this company? And how do my skills and talents contribute to that? So when you can speak to, here are the skills and talents that I bring to the table that help you hit this, and this goal, and you've done the homework to understand what those metrics are and value them, that's an incredibly powerful thing.
Now I'm following this, but in reality, there's so much information we can learn from the outside about a given company. And what if we don't fully grasp it and what we think are the marks aren't necessarily so? There's sort of a risk factor there too, is there not?
Well, that's why you're talking to people within the industry. I mean, nobody's expecting you to know the internal workings of that particular firm.
Yeah.
But you've got to understand enough so that, again, when you're talking to them, you're not talking about some goal that they don't have, or all you've done is read the job description, but you don't have a real understanding of the challenges that particular industry faces, or why or how this role impacts what the ultimate goal of the company is.
So if you make that contact with insiders, you've got to first of all be a good listener and really grasp what's going on before you open your mouth and
That's right.
try to lay out a plan.
That's right. So Mark, one of the big mistakes that people generally make is they start applying for jobs right off the bat. And then they waste opportunities because they're really not ready.
Yeah.
You know, there's this desire like, let me get out there right away. But you need to do a lot of homework before you start pitching yourself. Exactly. Yeah, you got to dig, you got to do homework, you got to make sure that you've repackaged yourself. If there are any gaps in your skills, you don't want to be out there selling and then find out, oh my God, I've got this huge gap that if I spent maybe 3 months filling, now I'd be a much stronger candidate. So it's really much more strategic than let me send out 50 resumes.
Now, you worked in corporate America for a long time.
Did.
I'm fascinated about your own transition into starting up your enterprise. So you saw this trend coming years ago.
I did.
When you were an insider. What were some of the flags? What was happening that really, led you to believe, we really are entering a time where we have to broaden our talents, broaden our vision, and reinvent ourselves? What was going on inside corporate America years ago?
I started this, it's 10 years ago.
Wow.
This summer. And two things. One is that this wasn't my first reinvention, okay? Back in 1994, I was in an industry, I was in Wall Street that I was not happy in, and I left it and I wanted to do something else. And I went looking for a company, a book, coach, something that could help me, and all the advice was about climbing the ladder in your current career, and there was nothing about switching ladders. So I had to figure that out the hard way, that I wanted to do entertainment, overcome all the hurdles, just like I'm telling you, how do you pitch yourself in a new industry? How do you make contacts when you don't know anybody? I'm a Milwaukee girl, what do I know about entertainment? All that kind of stuff. So I had to do all of that without any kind of guide.
Right.
And then I spent 10 years in that industry. At that point, I felt that the world of work was changing because of technology, okay? I always worked in products that were technology based. So I saw how quickly things were changing. And I felt that this idea of you go to a company, you stay there for 30 years, you retire, and then you get your pension and you ride off into the sunset was done and over. And in fact, we had already entered a new era and that people didn't realize it. Because even beyond just companies laying people off, what was starting to happen is that business cycles were starting to speed up. So what had been before was a 10-year business plan, was then a 5-year business plan, that now is a 3-year business plan.
And what was driving that, Pamela? What changed all that?
Technology
was driving it.
Basically what you were having is that business models, okay, that business models that had worked for years and years and years were being broken. Like in media, all of a sudden newspapers fell apart. Automotive industry fell apart. All these industries were falling apart.
Even 24-hour news cycles itself.
Exactly.
Media was changing.
Media was changing. All the industries were changing. And so when an industry changes, people that work have to change too.
Right.
So it's just basically, a downstream result of what was already happening from a business perspective. But in 2003, people weren't really waking up to the fact that, if a company's business model falls apart, it's got to reinvent itself. And if it's got to reinvent itself, you as an employee need to reinvent yourself too.
I can see how this can be scary, especially for us baby boomers, but you know what? The 20-plus members of the workforce have to change this as quickly, do they not?
Yeah, they're coming into it. This is the new way of managing careers.
Okay, the thing is they're learning this from day one, whereas it took us a few decades.
Right, well, and to really, in defense of baby boomers in that regard, okay, the contract between employers and employees has changed. It has shifted. It was not like this before. So that sense of betrayal, like we were told to do this and we did everything right and now it's different, that's real. That is real. It is different. It is no longer the way that it was. But you have to let go of the anger and the resentment and wishing that it would come back.
And it truly is over. We're not going back to what the workforce used to be.
No, we're not. We're not. And what people have to understand is that a company can't make a promise anymore. And if a company can't make a promise, how can they make a promise to you? If they have no idea what their business model is going to be in 3 to 5 years, they can't promise you that in 30 years they're going to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, and it used to be where corporations really did have a business model 7 years down the road.
Yeah.
But the turnover right now, the change in the marketplace really is that quick. A long-term model right now truly is no more than 3 years out.
That's, yeah.
And that's
about
stretching it?
3 to 5 years. Yeah, 3 years. 3 years. But think about it. Okay, let's think about let's take cell phones.
Sure.
Okay, just in 10 years.
Yeah.
All right. In the past 5 years ago, the iPhone came out. 5 years. Okay, 5 years ago, BlackBerry was the top company. Big entrepreneurial company, Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, long-term company that people worked at for years. This past summer, third of the workforce laid off. Okay, 5 years. 5 years. So what can you do?
Absolutely.
When something comes in and completely disrupts your business model? You can't make a promise because you don't even know. And if you don't catch that reinvention wave as a company, you're
The top management of corporations must be just as scared and uncertain as us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're surfing the same wave.
To what degree, though, and how large a portion of our baby boomer generation is in denial about what's happening? How many of us are still not only in denial, but bitter about what's happening and truly are waiting for the second coming of what used to be?
Yeah, exactly. And they're going to wait a long time, And what I say is, all these things exist. Yes, it did change. Yes, ageism exists. But that doesn't have to determine your own personal experience if you're willing to let it go and say, things are new now, I need to shift. And if I shift, I can have a different result.
You and I had a chance to talk a little bit about this in private before we started our presentation tonight. And it really is a combination right now. What we're really talking about is a combination of uncertainty and anxiety, but also hope, and there's an exciting element here, is there not? There really is. The reinvention theme is an exciting one.
Yeah, there's opportunity because when we look at 30 years ago, when you made a choice 30 years ago under the old contract, that was it. You went into that company, that was it. You were there. It didn't matter if you were happy, sad. You better hope you like what you did because that was it. Now we have the ability to change. We have the ability to say, hey, you know what? This was great for a while. I want to do something different. So there's a sense of freedom and flexibility that comes along with, the scariness and all of it. But we need to look at some of the benefits that it brings as well.
Pamela, you are a wonderful guest and so enlightening. And thank you for helping us better understand what we're all facing and the fact that we can get through this. And it really should be a stimulating time of life for us.
Yes.
Scary, but still stimulating.
Absolutely.
Pamela Mitchell, isn't she wonderful? She's great. We didn't have to look very far to find our next expert. She's Deneen Rood, Vice President of Learning right here at Waukesha County Technical College. Ms. Rood has extensive experience supervising managers, faculty, and support staff. She also has a talented background when it comes to accreditation, quality improvement, negotiations, and strategic planning. In addition, Deneen has worked in private industry as a management consultant, a business controller, systems administrator, and a staff auditor. Please help us welcome to our stage Ms. Deneen Rood. Deneen?
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Well, good evening, everyone. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about the merging of two crises, the current workforce skills gap and the looming labor shortage, and what this means for the future of our state. I'm also going to talk to you about what steps higher education, and specifically the Wisconsin Technical College system, is doing to address this crisis, and how the 50-plus population is going to be key to our state's economic success. So let's start with some background information about the skills gap. You might have read about this in the news, especially over the last year. Simply put, the skills gap is a mismatch between available jobs and the workers with the essential skills to fill those jobs. Here in Wisconsin, much of the recent conversation has been about the state's workforce skills gap in the manufacturing industry. Wisconsin is, per capita, the #1 state in the U.S. for manufacturing jobs. More than 20% of our gross domestic product comes from manufacturing. So as you can see, the economic vitality of our state is dependent upon this industry. But we don't have enough skilled workers to fill the current job openings. That's where the 50-plus population comes in. This population is critical to filling the labor gap. We need your maturity, we need your knowledge base, and we need your historical perspective. and we need it in our workplace today. So here are some interesting statistics for you to consider. Between 2010 and 2040, our working age population will grow by only 15,000 citizens, which is an increase of only 0.4%. Now, over the same time, the number of senior residents in Wisconsin will nearly double, from 777,000 to over 1.5 million. So our state's demographics are rapidly changing, and we need the current 50-plus population to help fill the skilled jobs that are available. But we need to have your skills up to date. Now, you may have heard about the workforce paradox, which simply means that we are currently in a time of high unemployment and high demand for skilled workers. This paradox has come about because although the unemployment rate remains high, the skills of the unemployed do not match those needed to fill the available jobs. Despite what you may have heard about the current job market in Wisconsin, there are jobs available in several sectors that require some specific skills. For example, as you can see from this graph, there are currently 1,000 jobs available in nursing and healthcare right now. By 2016, there's going to be a shortfall of 5,200 jobs in this field and an estimated shortfall of 13,300 jobs by 2021. This is a very sobering statistic. And the only way to prevent it is to get people the training they need for the jobs that will continue to be in demand. You see, today's fast-paced and changing world no longer allows us to coast into retirement. Every employee needs to be trained and keep his or her skills up to date. So, how is higher education responding to this workforce paradox? Well, one of the ways that we are responding is by developing what we call guided career pathways, or educational ladders, if you will. First, a definition. Guided career pathways are a sequence of connected educational steps. They allow learners to gain job-specific skills and training. They allow them to enter the workforce quickly, which is important, and increase your skills along a career path. It's important to know that career pathways also are not just a Wisconsin thing. There's a commitment to career pathways at the local, state, and national levels. This is a quote that appeared in a joint letter signed by the leadership of the U.S. Departments of Labor, Health and Human Services, and Education. And it says they support career pathways. Now, within Wisconsin, the Department of Workforce Development, the Technical College system, and numerous foundations have all demonstrated their commitment to career pathways. So let me show you how a career pathway works. First of all, we want to identify a program where there's a need to accelerate a prepared workforce. Let's take a look at the machine tool operation as an example. Here are the courses that you need in the one-year program, machine tool operation. And here's how you would take the machine tool operation diploma in shorter bites. Of course, students always have the option of completing the program in the regular full-time format, but these pathways offer a flexible option for those people who need to get into the workforce quickly. Every certificate moves a student along a pathway towards program completion. They can job out at any of those certificate levels, and then later come back and continue adding skills. These job out points are critical. Each one has to be an industry-recognized certificate or credential, come with a progressive skill set, and of course, a corresponding wage increase. Now, if we expand that pathways concept, the one-year technical diploma builds into the general manufacturing associate degree by adding just one more year of courses. A true pathway, though, expands beyond WCTC. We can add our high school dual enrollment programs, which means that students can earn credit while they're in high school. They can earn college credit. And then finally, we add our transfer opportunities into the four-year universities. Now, we continue to work diligently with our high school and our four-year partners to create seamless transfer of credits across all levels of education. Students, whether they're in high school or adult learners, simply do not have the time to waste repeating credits. It's too expensive and it's too time-consuming. This chart shows how education pays in higher earnings and lower unemployment rates. Progressively increasing wages for our citizens fuels economic development. And I call this, and you've heard this, a rising tide lifts all boats. So how do career pathways relate to the 50-plus generation? Well, first of all, let's take a look at what these individuals bring to the table, and Pamela did a great job explaining that as well. Here are the values and the attributes and the work styles of this generation. They're highly sought after in the workplace. As you can see, we have a lot to offer as 50-plus workers, but only if our skills are kept up to date. So the Wisconsin Technical Colleges are here to help you keep those skills up to date, and this will help us address the current workforce paradox. We continue to build guided career pathways, including short-term, higher-level certificates, just perfect for the 50-plus population. Some of the examples of this are certified financial planner, quality, project management, real estate. Doesn't that sound fun? These are short-term certificates that provide a marketable skill set and build upon the experience that this group already brings to the workforce table. But the technical colleges are just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to solving that workforce paradox. Partnership is required to make this all happen. Of course, we partner with our high schools and our universities as they are part of the extended career pathway. But pathways are not just the responsibility of education. It also requires business partners to really value each level of education and pay for that increasing value that an individual brings, and encourage their employees to go back to school, even incenting them by offering tuition reimbursement and giving them a flexible work schedule so they can go to school. And in addition, community partners such as the workforce development agencies and the chambers really have to understand this whole career pathways idea and then be able to explain that concept to their clients. So lastly, I want to tell you about the importance of lifelong learning. In addition to career growth, learning for personal enrichment is important for the 50-plus population. WCTC offers a variety of classes: arts and crafts, computer applications, cooking, fitness and exercise, and gardening. We really have something for everyone, and I'd urge you to check us out at wctc.edu. So I'd like to thank you tonight and for your attention this evening. I hope you found this information valuable, and I urge you to keep on learning.
Thanks so much, Deneen. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Wasn't she great? Absolutely. Our third and final presenter this evening is Lori Hayes, a volunteer coordinator at United Way of Waukesha County. Ms. Hayes oversees all the volunteer activities of her agency and is dedicated to the mission of connecting people with meaningful service. She also believes the gifts of time and human concern are essential to building better communities. Please help me welcome Ms. Lori Hayes. Lori?
Thank you, Mark. And I'm so excited to be here today. You know, I'm going to briefly talk about volunteerism. Kind of connects with the whole work piece, certainly ties into education and learning. But I want to go back for just a moment at the title of our presentation today: purpose. Purpose of life, learning, work. Purpose. Does life have meaning and purpose? Would you say yes? Absolutely. If life doesn't have meaning and purpose, what are we doing here today? Right? So, just clearly, the thought of purpose is about being outwardly focused or serving others. Serving others, volunteering. That ties in perfectly to one of the best ways that we can serve each other, especially to help our community. Now, serving from a volunteer standpoint, we could take that literally. We could go and serve at one of the local soup kitchens, or nowadays called community meals. But serving goes so much farther than that. There are so many ways to serve in our community. And you know what? Not just at the holidays, but all year long. Like in our opening photo here, we have lots of folks that engage in volunteering throughout our Waukesha County. We have folks that play with children, like with the little yellow duck. Play with children while parents are in receiving sessions on how to be better parents. We have volunteers that help out during events with office for different nonprofit agencies. We have people that learn with students by reading and tutoring, or perhaps painting one of the homeless shelters in our community, or helping paint signs and trails for born learning in our community. Lots of different ways to get engaged. All of them rewarding. All of them depend on what you're looking for. So that's a little bit of the maybe what we can do. Let's talk a little bit more about the why. We all have different triggers on what helps us realize we want to engage, to pick up that phone and make a call, or go online to find a volunteer opportunity. Maybe you're an empty nester. I'll be one next year. And you find yourself with a little extra time on your hands. Maybe you're looking to be part of something bigger. Enhance your resume. We talked about that quite a bit just recently. Are you looking to learn something new or to enhance your current resume, to keep those skills up to date? Maybe you do want to learn about tweeting. There's social media interns at any age in our community available. Are you looking for just something fun to do with you, your group, the ladies at church? Maybe a group at work, your family, all kinds of ways to get engaged. You know, when I moved to a new community, whether I was a young lady starting off in life, or now as I change where I live, looking to get connected to my community, but also to meet new people. Another great trigger. I am definitely a people person. And what a great way to learn and meet new people that are like-minded, doing the things you like to do in the community. Some of us have chosen a new journey with our careers, and some of us, as we just talked a little bit more, have had that thrust upon us with change. Whether you're finding that as something you've engaged or something that hasn't been engaged for you, I say great. What a great opportunity to find something new, and volunteering can help you. I'm kind of proof of that. I found myself without a job. I was about 2 years trying to kind of reinvent myself. What a great way to stop and pause and to think, what do I want to do? Through volunteering in my community, a lady picked up the phone and called me one day, knowing I was out of work, and she was on one of the community activities at one of the local nonprofits, United Way, and she said, "Lori, this position is not going to be posted. It sounds just like you." And I went, "It does?" And lo and behold, 3 years later, absolutely. But who knew? Who knew 5 years ago that I would now be in the role that I am today? So I'm kind of living proof that there's all kinds of ways. Certainly that's not why I started to volunteer, but what a great outcome. Whatever your trigger is, I know you're going to make a difference. I know you're going to inspire others. I know whatever takes you to the place to take action, There's so many ways to do it. Don't worry about the time commitment. Whether you want to give an hour, give a Saturday, or maybe something a little more long-term. We have a young lady in our office. She's recently retired. Every Monday, I count on Laura to come to our office and for 4 hours, help us with our mission. Help us with volunteer engagement. Volunteering is flexible. Don't worry about getting put in a box. Don't worry about what I should do. And again, if we're talking about the purpose piece, if we are truly focused on that purpose, all those worries kind of just go away. When you find yourself doing something that you're passionate about, or something that brings a smile to someone's face, or when you're driving home at night, or after that activity, and you just get this overwhelming, wow, I really made a difference today. In the right place, the right time, and so many different ways that you can get connected. I had a community member tell me today, in fact, I was talking with her, and she said, Lori, when you volunteer, all those other issues, concerns, maybe thoughts of, oh, what am I going to do, kind of go away because you are out there serving someone else. There are so many opportunities, like I said, to get connected. Just for example, through the Volunteer Center at United Way, we serve more than 70 agencies to help get you connected. More than 250 opportunities on a daily basis are posted on our site. So many ways to reward and be rewarded by serving others. I'll bet many of you already serve today. No one asked me. That's the phrase I hear a lot when I ask people, why aren't you volunteering? Nobody asked me. Share your good news for those of you who are already volunteering. And right now, I ask you, will you volunteer? We have a fabulous goal set for United Way in Waukesha County. It's Strive for 5, perhaps you've heard of it. The volunteer piece is we're looking to engage more than 500 new readers and tutors in the next 3 years. I would like to ask you to pledge to become a reader, tutor, mentor. Have you ever read a book to a child? Do you know how to speak English? There's so many ways to get engaged. We ask you to take the pledge at unitedwaywaukesha.org on our volunteer site. It's just as easy as a click. It's easy to get connected. Now, like I said, maybe some of you are already volunteering with your church group or school groups. Here at United Way in Waukesha County, I get to do that every day, is to help you get connected. Call me, Lori Hayes. We have also brothers and sisters in other communities, including in Milwaukee. We can get you connected to the Volunteer Center in Milwaukee or volunteermilwaukee.org. Another great way. Debbie and Bonnie are out there to help you out. And I just want to leave you with the thought and remind you, volunteering is serving. Volunteering is helping others. And by you helping them, what a great way to help yourself. Oh, by the way, by serving others, it's a rewarding opportunity. It's a way to live united.
Lori, thank you so much. Lori Hayes from United Way of Waukesha County. We appreciate it. We're going to move on now to the Q&A portion of our presentation this evening, and I'd like to remind you, you don't have to get up out of your seats. We'll bring microphones to you so that you can engage members of our distinguished panel tonight with questions pertaining to our theme. Also, we ask you to please finish completing the survey that we handed out to you so that you can, among other things, not only give us feedback about the presentation, but take part in our drawing, because the representative groups have graciously offered such things as, for example, Ms. Mitchell is going to be offering a couple of her copies of her book. as part of our drawing. And we're also going to be offering you a chance to get some pens, some t-shirts, some special novelties like that representing United Way of Waukesha County and other groups participating in our presentation tonight. So let's get started with our Q&A right now. And who has questions for members of our panel? Don't be shy. It's not a time in the proceedings to be shy. Yes, ma'am, go ahead. We're going to get a microphone to you. Just give us 1 second.
Thank you. How do you see volunteering tying into all three of your themes? How can you tie in educating yourself, reinventing yourself, and volunteering?
Very good. Absolutely. Through volunteering, there's an opportunity to learn new skills. Oftentimes, the nonprofits are looking for people who, as you mentioned, to bring that maturity, but also to learn. And they're more than willing to help train and carry on the mission. It's a great way to add things to the resume. I speak all the time to folks that are without jobs right now. I don't know about you, but you cannot sit at a desk for 10 and 12 hours a day to find a job. It's a way to get out and feel good, but it's also a great way to add something to the resume.
Absolutely. You know, and to add to that, Lori, I think what is really powerful about your own personal story around volunteerism and what I found as well is that it really helps connect you into a whole new circle of people. And that's what's also very important, at least from a career reinvention standpoint. So you're not only developing new skills, and to your point, you know, trying to look for a job all day long is really depressing. But when you're in that, sometimes you lose sight of the fact that you actually have something to give. So it taps you back into that. But it also helps people know who you are. And then it gets them thinking about you. And then that's a very, very critical piece of launching a reinvention.
And I think it's all about taking yourself out of your comfort zone. And as long as you get out of your comfort zone, and volunteering often can do that, it will teach you the skills. I can't say it any better than Lori and Pamela have. I had a similar story, personal story, as I got in this new career in education by volunteering at the local technical college. So I am wholeheartedly involved.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, sir, you were raising your hand. Do you have a question for us? We can get a microphone to you. Gentleman sitting in the back row, I believe. I guess not. I'm sorry. Sometimes you can be fooled. Who else has a question? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. I had worked full-time. I am looking more like for part-time. Do you see my age group being hired part-time, and what type of training would I need for something like that?
I'll start, and then I think that employers are going to be looking at all sorts of opportunities as they need to fill their skills gap. Employers are also going to have to be more flexible in hours that they're willing to hire people for. And you get that training by coming to WCTC.
Is it good for us to accept a part-time job in hopes that it will materialize into a full-time job, or is it a bit of a risk?
Well, you know, I think that it depends on why you're accepting that part-time job. If you really just need cash flow coming in, take it because you want to have that cash flow.
Right.
And then give it your all. You know, don't count on it turning into full-time. Be completely fine if it doesn't. But you really just want it to be part-time. So, you know, looking for those kinds of opportunities, it can really be a win-win for people. But in terms of the skills, you really want to decide what it is you choose to do and where you feel you have the best talents to offer, and then look to see what kind of match in terms of developing further skills to make you the most attractive package.
And Pamela, if we're taking that part-time job for cash flow purposes, how can we also use it as a form of networking? And I should be asking all three of you this, without being too obvious about it and being a little obnoxious about it.
Well,
I mean, how do we network?
The whole point is for people to know you and what you can do. And I think that there's a way of doing that in a very authentic manner.
Subtle way?
In subtle way. Well, you know, again, if you've got a bigger goal for that particular job than just showing up and doing the best job you can and having as many people know you as possible, then it's going to feel inauthentic, okay? So understand that that job is about bringing in cash, and it's about having people know you and having something for your resume.
Be yourself.
Be yourself, and that's it. If it happens to turn into something more, fabulous. But at the end of the day, you got what you wanted at the basic level. I think when people go in thinking, I want this more, and then they end up being disappointed, and then it affects the job performance as well.
Yeah. And you agree with that, Deneen?
I would. And I think you use it as a way to fill up. How did you describe it? Filling up the rest of you if you come in with half? Just use it to fill up another skill set that you have. One of my career goals or career philosophies is always learn a new marketable skill every year. Just take it upon, whether it's learning Spanish or learning how to type or whatever. Just keep learning.
And Lori, that's one of the beautiful things of volunteerism. I mean, it's a win-win situation. There's always that opportunity.
Absolutely, and I have seen a number of folks that have started certainly volunteering and moving into a part-time role. Or, you know, anytime you're embraced by a corporation and you are surely putting your best foot forward, those people rise to the top. And when the next opportunity comes up, you go, oh, well, what about Sally? Because she's just already there. She knows the company, she knows what's going on, and as the success of companies keep growing, there may be more opportunities. We like part-time workers, actually, because we have such peaks and valleys in our industry that our part-time workers have agreed to go full-time during our peak and get back to part-time off-peak.
Which is lovely.
And we have a follow-up. Yes, ma'am?
The other question I have is if you worked in one area, does WCTC have anything where you can take a test or give you ideas of things that maybe you didn't think about before, even though you were channeled like I had been in more of the dental field, and maybe there's something different that I never thought about? Do they have any tests like that can kind of open up your horizons?
Absolutely. So you're talking about like career exploration, doing some career exploration?
Correct.
Absolutely. Actually, we have two of our experts sitting in the audience, almost right next to you.
Oh, great.
So yes, you'd come in and see one of our advisors, career specialists, and they would help you with that. Absolutely.
Okay, ladies, this is for all of you. In addition to the resources of going to school and volunteering, for the person who is still working or perhaps can't afford to pay for a class or is not interested in volunteering right away, what are some other resources that are available, for example, online, that one can tap into?
Well, I guess I'll start because on my website, which is reinvention-institute.com, I have a lot of free resources for people. I send out a reinvention tip of the week. I send out a monthly newsletter that has articles and things that I recommend for people. I have, a free Career Reinvention 101 course that basically, it's right on my homepage, you can get that, and that'll take you through like the first things that you need to know to begin your reinvention. So, those are great ways to get started in terms of if you're thinking about a career reinvention, that you can just kind of go in and get some free resources.
Excellent. Lori?
Boy, anytime you log on to websites, there's so much helpful information. Same thing with our volunteer website. You can log in and just play anytime you want. That's the great thing about that darn internet, 24/7.
Absolutely.
And really wait for the opportunity to pop up, or that trigger, that moment where you go, yes, I want to help out the Cancer Society. And those positions are always there.
Excellent. You have a question.
Okay, I have a question for Pamela. Pamela, if you had a career going full steam ahead, got married and decided to have children right away, 1, 2, 3, doesn't matter, and took a I don't want to say detour, but you want to stay home with your children. How hard is it to get back on track? And what can you recommend? I'm not, it might be 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, doesn't matter, but to step off the career path and raise children, how important is that to your career success long term?
Well, I think it ultimately depends on what you want to do long term. I mean, the whole point of reinvention skills and why I teach this is so that you have the ability to adjust your career according to the stages of your life. So when you're having children, your career necessarily needs to shift. And then when those children leave home, there's another opportunity for a shift. But what I would say is, don't wait until the kids have packed up the car and driven off before you start thinking about this, okay? We know when these stages are gonna hit. Give yourself 3 or 4 years to begin on-ramping. And volunteering is such an incredibly powerful way, but intentional volunteering, thinking about what you were doing before, looking at exploring things that maybe you're interested in, looking at refreshing certain skills as you're doing that, all in that time where your children are getting ready to kind of launch. And so then when they are launched, you have now got a body of skills and some tangible experience that you can now bring to the work world.
And you know what? Never sell yourself short.
Yeah.
Parents, parenting, oh my gosh, how much have you learned in the last umpteen years? Managing people, it's not too much different than managing little people. Multitasking, right? You have so many skills that you've learned during that time. It might not just be Excel, the latest 2010, but all those other skills is really transferable in so many ways.
That's so true. The roles of supervisors, when you're dealing with, talent within the office or within the workplace, I mean, a huge percentage of it is really trying to smooth out disagreements.
Absolutely.
I mean, in reality, it's a day-to-day thing, is it not?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sometimes it's easier dealing with toddlers.
Yes. Milk and crackers help, though, don't they? The reward system. Yes, ma'am.
Pamela, could you repeat your website again, please?
Sure. It's reinvention-institute.com. So reinvention-institute.com.
Yes, ma'am, you have a question, and we'll get a microphone to you right over there. Let's see. Thank you.
I was wondering, how could a high schooler apply this to their life? I noticed you focused on the older generation and had some very good information on that, but how could this apply to younger people?
Oh, love that question.
That is a great
Yes.
question.
Yeah. Go ahead, start.
I think it's so important that high schoolers are understanding the importance of lifelong learning. So often they'll go into a college and say, I'm choosing accounting and I'm going to be an accountant forever. And there's only one way to get there. So if high schoolers and people in college and at all ages understand that career laddering idea and that there's a lot of different ways to get there.
Yeah, agreed. And to sort of piggyback on what you said, Deneen, I think this way of managing careers where you're making these shifts every 5 to 7 years is the new way of career management. So kind of as you're coming up through high school to understand that the decisions that you're making are not lifetime decisions. So there's nobody saying that you have to decide now. So pick the things that you're interested in right now that you feel would be fun and that would develop some skills. And then throw yourself into that, but know that you're not locked in and that you will have another opportunity to make different decisions and to take those skills with you. So I think just looking at pursuing the different things that you're interested in and giving yourself that freedom around it is how you can apply this and continue to move forward as you're beginning to develop.
Especially in volunteerism.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different places, especially if you're 12 and above. Younger, we normally need to have some parents along. But you can look at all those different opportunities and go, I really think I'd like to work with animals. Well, what if you work during a little externship with any nonprofit and you find out, nope, really don't like to do that, then you can scroll through our list and find some other options. So you can do that and not get locked in, like you were saying. And you know, there's so many externships, that volunteer opportunity to try all kinds of different things with a little more commitment than maybe an episodic, one time with a volunteer opportunity. The externships or that volunteer piece at nonprofits really appreciate you being there 10 hours, 20 hours, depending on your schedule, a week. And that's another great way to put some good information on a resume, as well as testing the waters.
And do in fact add that to your resume, that you've been volunteering.
Absolutely.
At there's all kinds of sessions, sections in the...
Yeah, and depending upon kind of where you are and how long you've been there and what your other experience is, you can either add it under a separate volunteerism section, or you can actually add it as work. If you're really, there, 20 to 30 hours a week and you're performing functions, it doesn't really matter whether or not it's paid. You're doing a job.
And so doing that, what does that say to a potential employer when that hiring individual actually sees, oh yeah, Joe has worked at such and such a place as a volunteer? What does that tell them? How does that broaden the scope of what they're looking for, perhaps? I don't know.
It tells a lot about their personality, that they're a go-getter, that they're going to hopefully do that in the workplace as well.
But it's not all about dollars and cents, as they're really committed. Huh?
Right,
Exactly.
right.
It really does enhance your level of commitment. And that employer is going to think, if they're this committed and they showed up and they did this work and it was in a volunteer capacity, how much more committed and loyal will they be to me? This is a person that I really value.
Another great characteristic.
Yes, another question. Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm feeling a real gap here between how we can retrain ourselves to work for someone else or volunteer. How about creative entrepreneurship, where you create your own reality?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Sounds like a great idea. I know Wisconsin is looking for more and more entrepreneurs. And that's, I think it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Well, absolutely. Well, speaking as the entrepreneur here, who went from corporate to entrepreneurship, that's absolutely actually a really incredibly powerful way to move forward. And in fact, I just recently read a study that said by 2020 that a good 50% of the workforce will be 1099, which is some form of entrepreneurship. And looking at what you have to offer that people are willing to pay for is basically the bottom line. So what do you have to offer that you can create something around? And the barriers to entry are very, very low because of technology now. You don't necessarily have to be located where your business is. You can reach lots of customers, all of those things. So just kind of thinking at your skills and say, what will somebody pay me for, is kind of the very first piece of stepping out from that entrepreneurship role. And one other thing I want to say about entrepreneurship is that, these days you can have a portfolio career. You can have a part-time job one place and have your own business on the side. So it doesn't have to be an either-or thing either.
Absolutely.
And that's a good way to get started.
Yes. Yes, it is.
That's a good. I think that we've covered all the questions. Anyone else? I think we're
over here.
I think we have one. Just time for a quick question, if we may. Yes, sir.
Hi, I am in the demographic a little bit younger, the 24 age range, and I know we talked about the website LinkedIn a little bit earlier. I was just curious as to how people my age could serve as a better resource to the 50-plus population in terms of helping out our folks at home, talking to, connecting with people of the older generation and making the career transition a little bit easier. I know that it can be really stressful just from being in my demographic and applying to a lot of jobs, volunteering at a lot of places, and just going through that process over and over again.
What do you think?
Well, what I would say to that is, the facility and the understanding of the online connection and the power of it and how to reach out is what your generation really has to offer to the 50 plus. Sometimes it's just as simple as the mechanics. How do you put up a profile? How do you send somebody a LinkedIn request? All of those things that to you are so obvious and second nature are, to kind of reference our entrepreneurship fellow here, the kinds of things that people are willing to pay for. So, looking at that, but then also what I would say to you is to listen to what the 50 plus tell you about what's important in relationship. Okay, and what the ultimate goal of that connection is, and what happens offline, because that will help inform the kinds of advice and how you use social media, and that will make you an even more powerful assistant or a powerful offering in terms of how you help that generation.
Ladies, you were terrific presenters tonight. Thank you so much. Weren't they great? Pamela Mitchell, Deneen Rude, and Lori Hayes. That wraps up our theme for this evening. Our latest community conversation, Work and Purpose. Thanks for being with us. Good night from the beautiful campus in Milwaukee of Waukesha County Technical College. Take care now.
All right. Fabulous. Thank you.